episode 3 of the FCG podcast. We are very excited for today's guest, my good friend and long coach to many great players, and Rick Sessinghaus is here. He coaches Collin Morikawa. I believe you were just recently inducted to the SCPGA Coaching Hall of Fame as well, and also founder of the Flow Code, which we'd love to talk about today. So Rick, thanks for being here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
We also have Connor here today as well.
Hey, Connor.
Yes, I am back from mono. I've been out for the last month or so. So good to be back. Starting to pump these out again. Rick, it's a pleasure to have you here. You are our first guest on the show, and I can't think of a better start.
All right, let's go.
So Rick, let's just jump right into it. You are the founder of Flow Code, which kind of specializes in mental fortitude on and off the course. Why don't you walk us through how you got that started and where kind of this idea came from?
Sure. No, thanks. It's a long story. I'm going to shorten it up a lot. So when I started coaching 28 years ago, I was obsessed with the golf swing. I thought everything about scoring and being a great player is about swing. After I taught for a couple years, I found out real quick it was more than just perfect positions and all those type of things, and started getting obsessed with the mental game. Went back to school, got a doctorate in applied sports psychology, wrote a book, and just really love going down the rabbit hole of peak performance as it relates to the mental skills. And we may get into this a little bit later, but mental skills like focus and confidence and emotional control and how you practice, how you prepare for tournaments, all those things I felt were being undercoached. And I just really enjoy talking about them and taking people on the golf course and stuff. And so fast forward, I've been coaching for 28 years. I wanted to make an online platform. I wanted to be able to share this beyond just one-on-one. And that's where Flow Code Golf Academy came into light about 3 years ago. Partnered with a gentleman from Slovenia, of all places. And we've really connected, and what he does a great job. He has a background in sports psychology also, but he has a background in kind of the graphics and all this stuff to make everything look pretty. And it's just grown from there. And we do coaching certification, we do online memberships, we do live events, and just really looking forward to getting the education out there of the mental game to help those junior golfers, right? Help all those golfers enjoy the game more, which is the number one thing, and then of course play better golf.
Right. Wow, that's fascinating. That's super interesting how, of all the places you could potentially find like a business partner, Slovenia was the end goal there.
LinkedIn is a wonderful place sometimes.
Absolutely. So, let's talk about kind of the mental side, because I think me as a junior as well, I think I fell victim to this too. And we get very swing obsessed, and we get, we do start chasing after perfection in terms of the swing. But at the end of the day, you see players like Bubba Watson, you see players like Brian Harman who, might not hit it the longest or the straightest or the most, like orthodox players, but they have this mental, this mental fortitude that is unparalleled in professional golf. And I think, it is one thing to have a great swing, but at the end of the day, your mind is going to win you tournaments. It's not going to be your swing.
No, definitely. And I know, I'm still a swing coach. I do know there's a cause and effect, right? The ball goes where the club face tells it to go. I get that. But I ask people all the time is why one day does a ball go, a certain direction and the next day it goes somewhere else? You could say it's swing, fine. But I'm very much into the state you're in will affect that. If I'm in a stress response and I'm distracted, I have doubt, I have tension, probably I'm going to swing different than if I'm focused and confident and relaxed. My state would affect how I hit a flop shot, how I hit a putt, the feel, and all those type of things. So I'm very much into state management as the way to help people repeat peak performance. It's the repeatability that we're after. Everybody wants to be more consistent, but I don't think they look at the consistency of their state on a shot by shot, round by round basis.
Right. So let's talk about these states. Like, I know you have a lot of quote unquote like responses as part of your flow code. You know, be it that stress response, be it that flow response, be it that learning response. Can you kind of enlighten us as to what these different types of responses are? How are they formulated during a round, and how do they lead into how it can, like, impact your round?
Sure. Yeah, we've and I say we because I now have a team with Flow Code. We've tried to simplify it as best as we can. Is most golfers, unfortunately, play golf in a fear state, and we want to take people to a flow state, right? And fear is very much about what potentially could go wrong in the future. We get it to a shot and we start linking, oh, I don't want to go there, and oh, last time I was on this hole, I went over here, and don't do that, and just that thought would trigger a stress response, or in this case, a fear response. Flow is looking at things that are in your control and saying, hey, what's the best shot for me to play right now? And then, oh, I can't wait to hit this shot, and being creative. You mentioned Bubba Watson, very creative player. That helps him get in the moment. Flow follows focus. Your ability to pay attention to the present moment is a superpower that most people don't develop. And so fear is usually about the future, about what they don't want. Flow is about being fully absorbed in the moment and can't wait to do it. So there are many different responses, as you mentioned, but we usually just narrow it down to, am I in a fear state or am I in a flow state? And a lot of it has to do with the thoughts, or what we call the meanings behind the shot. So we've all had, all the listeners out there, even if you made a bogey in the last hole, you come up to this short par 5 and you just get excited, goes, oh, I love this hole. Okay, why do you love this hole? Well, because past memory, I made a birdie on it. Now I could flip it and make a birdie on a hole and walk up and go, oh, I hate this hole. Well, your thought and your association now is going to trigger a different response in my body. So thinking patterns are extremely important for golf. I think we've talked a lot about pre-shot routines, and that's fine, and I certainly do that also. But I'm not sure if we go that step deeper to say, do you actually want to hit the shot that's in front of you or not? We go through, I do this routine. I said, okay, now let's get excited about this, or I can't wait to create a shot like Bubba Watson, or I can't wait to, challenge myself with this shot, and there's different things that can actually trigger focus, which is part of, again, the research on flow. Is you can have a great routine per se, but why on some shots are you more focused on than others? And sometimes we let the environment, unfortunately, affect things too much, but we want to actually train our internal environment, our thoughts and our emotions a little bit better.
Very interesting concept. I think, Chris, I kind of want to hand this over to you. I mean, one of your longtime students, Zahab, just very recently qualified for the Korn Ferry Tour in the finals. What do you see as that kind of separates him out from the rest of your students, say, perhaps, just in terms of that mental focus? Is there kind of that mental flow that he has? What kind of makes him special?
Yeah. Last week was a great week having Ziha get through. He's definitely the most prepared player I've ever worked with. I mean, he does everything right, from evaluating his game to nutrition to sleep to doing practice rounds correctly, and he's got good success. He won the Cal State Open there just a few months ago at 15 under. He had to shoot, I think, 5 under the final round of first stage just to get into second stage. He was kind of on the bubble again going into the final round, and he did send me messages the night before the final round that he was nervous. And all I said was, there's nobody else more prepared for this moment. This is what you practiced for. You have to trust yourself. And, it turns out he had a lot of doubt in the first 9 holes, and he made 2 bogeys in a row, I think, to turn one over. And I know he told his caddy, Patrick, who he's working with now, and they're doing a great job together. But he told him he needed to go 3 under through 12, and he did it. The next 3 holes, he birdied 3 of the next 4, and he just put the pedal down, birdied 15. and then he had an awesome 2-putt on 18 to shoot. Ended up being 9 under and making it by, looks like 3. So yeah, I mean, he's done really a lot of special things in final rounds. I mean, even go back to his junior golf, he shot, I think, 64 the final round of our FCG International to win that event. He's been probably 60 or 70 under par just this summer alone. So how he does it, I mean, he's all golf and he does everything right. But Rick, I had a question about the evaluation of mental game and during how you handle, talking to players after rounds, like what kind of questions you ask or how do you go back into those shots that maybe they messed up on.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's important that we're always assessing. So one of my favorite words is curiosity. It's easy to be critical on a golf course, and all you parents out there that are listening to this, please remember this. You being critical of your son or daughter is going to be of no help at all. Helping them be curious about their performance is going to be what's going to help them long term. So to me, curiosity of a post-shot routine, let's start with a shot in and of itself, is, that ball went left. The old Rick would say, you stink, Rick, you're horrible. I can't believe you hit it left. That's critical. Now I hit it left and go, that's interesting. That ball went 40 yards left. I wonder why. Was that a mental error? Was that a physical error? And so I'm using curiosity and questions to help me process it. Doesn't always have to be positive, everybody, but we want to neutralize a little bit more of that critical, judgmental talk, because it could erode confidence. It could make us frustrated and such. After the round, I think the same things apply. I would want parents and junior golfers to ask themselves 3 basic questions. It starts with is, what did I do well? Most people are always, what did I do wrong? What did I do well? What did I learn? And what do I need to work on? Now, what do I learn could be both, hey, I learned that when I made 3 birdies in a row, man, I was just in this flow state. Or, you know what, I made that mistake on 12. I misclubbed. I need to learn how to read the wind better. Or, great, learning is going to be a key foundation. The third one is, what do I need to work on? To me, is taking action towards making it better. It's not just making excuses. I talk about, with Collin Morikawa, I've never heard him make an excuse ever. So it wasn't about the bad, the bumpy greens and the wind and the pace of play and all these excuses that people make. It was deal with it and move on. Now, you may have to work on it and say, hey, I need to work on when I'm playing in very windy conditions, or I need to be more patient when I'm playing with slow players. Great. You have to learn from it. So curiosity is going with that. So the player needs to know what they did well. I start with that first, because we're especially the better the player, the higher the expectations. They just are wired to tell me what they're doing wrong all the time. There needs to be a balancing act with that. So post round routine, I think, is quite important, because I know we're talking to a lot of juniors and parents. Have there be a little bit of a cooling off period, maybe at least an hour between when your son or daughter signs a scorecard and when you go home or when you're in a car. We don't need to rehash that they 3-putted 17 and stuff like that. Let your son or daughter have a timeout for a while and put on, So there needs to be some form of a 1 or 2 hours of not talking about golf with that, because we'll get very emotional if we come right off the golf course and we're bombarded with, why did you do this? And I can't believe you 3-putted and that, golfers are not going to be in a good frame of mind to give you a good productive response.
Definitely. And I feel like I completely agree with everything that you've just said. It's one of those things where I see it all the time too. It's like, like I'll walk off the golf course and my coach will be like, well, why did you do this? And it's like, well, I know why I did it. I'm just going to get upset at you or grumpy at you. It's not like, this is not going to be anything productive here. It's like, I can explain this in depth when I've had a chance to even process it. Because golf takes a toll on us mentally. And it is one of those things where when you walk off the course, you do feel this sort of, this relief that it's over. You're happy that you've done well. But I do really want to circle back to kind of your point on what we do well and what we don't do well. And I've fallen victim to this so many times where, I'll shoot 65 or 66, and all I can think about is I've bogeyed a 300-yard par 4, and it's the only thing on my mind, and it's the only thing I think about for the rest of the day. And it's like, okay, you have to take a little step back, because you did hit 2 par 5s and 2. You had two looks at eagle inside 20 feet. It's like, yes, we love to dwell on our mistakes. And I think your point on getting out of the excuse mindset and getting into that curiosity mindset is so crucial for junior golfers to kind of unlock that next stage of learning. Because you're right, it is, you have a choice at the end of every shot or at the end of every round, and it is one of those things where you can choose to be upset and be frustrated and be angry, or you can have that opportunity to look forward and go, how can I make this better in the future? I have this mental catalog of the last 1,000 or so shots that I've hit, and it is one of those things where I really feel like, okay, I can pull from my catalog and go, in the stress of the moment, on 17, when I have a 1-shot lead, here's what I did wrong. And what can I do to fix that? Because, you've talked about flow states. I've kind of done a little bit of research into your podcast and into your coaching. And I know you've said you prefer to play kind of in that amplified flow state. You're very emotionally vested. You're very pumped up. Collin Morikawa, on the other hand, is very zen, very focused, very nonchalant about the whole thing. He finds kind of his rhythm and flow. I guess kind of my next question to you is how do you tell golfers, how do people find their individual flow state? What makes an individual's flow state happen for them, and how do we go about finding it?
Okay, so this podcast is 5 hours long. We're going to get into everything. Okay, I'm kidding. So it's a great question, and there's a lot of intricate. I want to backtrack a little bit to when you talked about catalog of your thousands of shots, right? Our memory, what we remember, is built a lot on emotion. So if I hit a poor shot, and I'm just talking back in the day when I played college golf, and I slam a club down and say, "You're horrible, Rick," I'm going to tend to remember that shot more because I put an emotional stamp to that. And then let's say I hit that par 5 and 2, and I just go, well, yeah, I'm supposed to do that. I'm a good player. And you don't stamp the great shots, you will actually have a harder time remembering the great shots, everybody. I just want people to be fair to themselves. Yeah, you're going to get a little frustrated here, but I do want a little bit of, hey, internally, that was a really good shot, Rick. Way to go for that. Oh man, that felt so good off the face. I had such a clear picture of that. Let's, again, anchor those great shots also. So I wanted to backtrack on that a little bit, is we can have a inventory of shots, but people tend to remember the ones they put emotion to. Why don't we put a little bit of positive emotion to some of our shots so we can recall them a little bit later? Now, back to the big question, which is about, again, the studies that I've done with flow now in the last 20 years, and especially in the last 5 years, is we know that flow is an actual physiological response. We know that there is a brainwave activity that is lower, less thinking. We know there's certain neurochemicals that are going through your body. We know that there's a heart rate variability. So we know it's an actual state, everybody. A lot of people say, it's the zone, the flow, it only happens a little bit. It's like, but why don't we start to train for it more and more? So I'm going to answer it kind of two separate ways. One is back to the idea that each person is an individual. We have different golf swings. Nobody swings the same way, nor should they. We have different physical limitations, different strengths. Same thing with the psychology of it. Back to like personality styles. If I said there's Brooks Koepka, Rory McIlroy, Collin Morikawa, and Bryson DeChambeau, they are 4 completely different personalities. They've all won major championships. Okay. And so who you are can play great golf, everybody. Okay. I'm energetic. I like to be engaged. I like to be out there. I like to talk in between shots with my friends. I like to, bring that energy and fist pump out. That's me. Great. If I tried to be like Collin and be a little bit calmer, I don't know if I'd get as much enjoyment, first off, and I don't know if I'd have the same engagement to it. Yet, if I was like Bryson and took a long time and tried to be a perfect and try to think through that, that wouldn't resonate with me either. Okay. So just realize that, who you are can play great golf. Now there's interferences If I play in slow groups with quiet people, that may be potentially some challenges for me. But then we get back to what are some things we call them flow triggers, is back to focus. So flow follows focus. Chris teaches great pre-shot routine. I teach pre-shot routine, but there's a layer that we sometimes ignore, which is I can put somebody and say, okay, what do we focus on? We got the lie, the win, we go through all the variables, we make a decision, we go for it, right? But there's now things studied where why on one shot are you more focused on than another? If we're doing the same routine, shouldn't it have the same level of focus? You would think. But back to there are flow triggers like creativity, for instance. And this is, I say this in podcasts, I say all this time, is a lot of the players out there, if I gave you a trouble shot or a recovery shot underneath a tree, what's the percentage you pull that off? And they go, oh, you should see how good I do on these shots, Rick. I'm a magician. And I go, interesting, because that's a much harder shot than a wedge shot from 80 yards in the middle of the fairway to a middle hole location with no bunkers. And then they sometimes make an unforced error and they miss the green, go, oh my gosh, what happened? It's like, no, your focus wasn't at the same intensity. When we have risk, when we have a challenge, when we have creativity, when we have clear goals is a big part of flow. When I'm fully clear on what I need to do, we can put that energy into it. A recovery shot has a lot of these triggers that helps us fully focus in the present moment. The 80-yard shot from the middle of the fairway to a middle hole location for a good player, it's like, that's easy. Oh yeah, it's like, and they get lazy and they get, and what ends up happening is they miss it. They go, what just happened there? Well, that was a focus breakdown before it was ever a swing breakdown. So flow follows focus for everybody is that figure out what helps you get up the focus a little bit more. Like for me, curiosity is my superpower, right? If I'm curious about a shot, I'm focused, okay? I would say a Bubba Watson is creative. I would say a Phil Mickelson is risk taker. I mean, those things would help. If I can funnel that into the present moment, you're more likely to be focused. Yet if those things are not there, or if I say, it's as easy as that, and it's not that we become distracted, everybody, it becomes that we don't have the same level of intensity there. And that's what is part of flow, is flow follows focus is the first one. The second one to throw out is something what we call challenge versus skills. Confidence is a key indicator for the mental side, for sure. I can have the greatest pre-shot routine in the world. This is what I need to do. And then if I have a belief system that says there's no chance in hell that I can hit the shot, good luck, okay? So confidence, my belief I can actually hit the shot is crucial. That's built on this model called challenge versus skills. Do you believe that your current skills can match this current challenge? And if it's yes, fantastic. If that challenge is higher, like somebody says, I get nervous, in that moment, they're saying the challenge is higher than what they think their skills are. They get anxious and worried. Whether it's true or not, everybody, most likely it's usually not, but we perceive the challenge as much higher. Or, back to really good players, is when they believe that the challenge is low and the skills are high, they get bored a lot. And boredom is no good for peak performance either. So we are always looking at focus, and we're looking at how do we up either our skill sets or we match skills versus challenge to get us into a sweet spot. Now, again, there's other many things that have to do with flow state, but those are the two main ones.
Definitely. That's a fascinating insight, because I think I have to agree with you in that, I find my flow state probably is more, because I tend to get pretty amped up too. And I actually find it hurts me more than it helps me sometimes. I play a lot of match play, and, yes, when I get fired up, it's really great. I play with two of my coworkers, and, I play against the two of them, and they're playing best ball and I'm playing my own ball. And I have what they call like my back nine run, where I will, out of nowhere from 10 through 14, I'll go ahead and rattle off 4 birdies to scare the crap out of them. We'll go ahead and throw it out there. But I always find that my confidence has this big impact on how I play golf, because it is one of those things where if I feel like I'm practiced, I'm really playing, like a lot, I'm putting on my rug inside, I'm really drilling, these challenges I feel like I can meet, I had this big belief for 5 or 6 years that I only really got rid of kind of in the last year, where, I always thought I was a terrible ball striker. So, I had this reliance on my short game where I could just go, that's okay if I miss greens. I'll just make every up and down. That's okay. I think my high school career, I averaged about six greens in regulation and averaged about 24 to 26 putts per round. It's one of those things where, we have these triggers in our brains where we go, okay, I'm good at putting, or I'm good at irons. Why do I need to focus on anything else? Chris, I kind of wanted to throw it over to you. Where do you see most of these shortcomings, say in like the golf swing, or, in kind of what separates these players who say have a slightly better swing but are kind of mentally lacking? Or do you find that those with kind of that mental the fortitude tend to go further in their golf?
Yeah, that's a good question. It comes down to the player's ingredients. I think of what kind of player they become and what experiences they went through. Just like you went through a period of being a bad ball striker. When I started golf at 15, and from 15 to 17 and a half, I hit the ball horrible. It was not pretty, but I learned how to score. I hit slices and hooks, and I could get up and down from a trash can, and I just learned how to get the ball in the hole. I never panicked. I enjoyed that process, like Rick talked about, being excited about the opportunity to hit a crazy flop shot and get up and down and beat somebody. And I used to love it, driving people crazy. But then I worked with my coach, and I got my ball striking better my senior year. And then you put those two together, where you hit it good and you get up and down. I had a decent run for a couple of years where I felt like I was a pretty good player. So I think that kind of goes to your question, is what experiences each player are going through. Some kids, if you talk about the long-term development plan, there's a lot of kids that are really good up until they're like 12, right? They get really good. They're great ball strikers. Then teenage years hit, and they kind of struggle, and maybe their hips are firing faster than normal, and they're growing, and now all of a sudden they don't hit it good, and now they're not very confident in what has happened. So there's a switch there that has to be addressed. But if they get through that could also be, one of the most powerful things for their whole long-term career. So I'm sure Rick is. I'm interested, Rick, to wonder how Collin was growing up. Did he go through any periods where maybe he struggled, or maybe he wasn't very good for a little bit of time, but then he overcame some things like that?
Yeah, no, and the word that we've said a couple times is development, right? Chris, you and I are into developing juniors. It's not about quick fixes. It's not about, hey, a parent comes to you, hey, little Johnny, I want him to win the Future Champions event next week, and it's all about the short term. You and I have always been about developing how are they going to be better 3, 4, 5 years from now, which is a different process. So I was fortunate that Collin and his parents trusted me to do that, and they weren't, like, oh, he just shot 80. What's wrong? I never got anything about what's wrong or what he shot or anything like that, which is refreshing. It was about, this is my plan for him, and this is what we need to do. And when he was 15, introducing fitness, and we're introducing these different things along the way. Once I knew that he wanted to play Division I college golf, you're creating now a plan for that. And so I was very, very fortunate that they bought into that. Specifically for Collin, he probably had a 6-month, and again, very, very fortunate, everybody, that he had about a 6-month when he was about 15 to 16, where he did have a growth spurt. There was, you're changing a little bit of clubs at the time, you're changing that. It wasn't a massive drop, but it was a little bit of a drop. And then he ended up winning the Junior Western in one summer, which put him on the map from a national perspective. And then you just saw him again get consistent. Yet for all those listening, if you go back, Collin was never the best 8-year-old. He was never the best 12-year-old. He was never the best 14-year-old. So you have to understand that he was very good. Don't get me wrong. He never won an AJGA event. Okay. I think we've joked, Chris, I don't think he, ever won a Future Champions event. Right. And yet you see he's having a successful pro career for sure. and he had a very successful college career, and it was about the consistency of what can I do day in and day out. So he had a very good attitude about those little dips in performance every now and then. I want to tell a quick story. I just came from Australia, and I got to work with the Australian, they call them high performance team. And so Australia develops junior golfers a lot differently than we do here in the States. And I don't want to get derailed on good or bad. I'm just going to say they do it differently. Australia puts a team around a junior golfer quite early, helps them learn how to go to tournaments, and it's a complete package from a swing coach to mental to physical to everything is taken care of if you're in the program. And I got to speak to Cam Smith's coach and his trainer, and just seeing that Cam Smith, one of the best players in the world for sure, had a lot of ups and downs throughout his junior and even professional life. And it's when he flipped a switch, he became very competitive. He wanted to be the best he could be, and there was a shift in his motivation. And you now see somebody who's again one of the best players in the world. So back to the mental side is, how do you deal with that adversity? How do you deal with the things that are in your control is a skill. And yet, if we're always constantly saying, "Oh, we got to get points at our next event. We got to do this. We do lose sense of what is in your control and how do I want to get better this week and next week." And again, I could go on a rant off that. But looking long term over short term fixes, I think, is crucial for junior development.
That's a fascinating take. No, it's funny you actually bring up. I unfortunately had the pleasure and the downside of running into Collin during his collegiate days. The tournament I made my debut at was at the Farms Golf Club here in San Diego, which, for those who don't know, is a brute of a golf course on a good day. And I was a little freshman who had just qualified for his first tournament, playing D1, completely out of my league, I felt. And who was there but Collin Morikawa and his UCLA team.
UC Berkeley. Yeah, UC Berkeley.
Correct.
Yep.
My apologies. The Golden Bears. And him and I had very different experiences, I would argue. I shot 88, 85, 80 and walked off the golf course and cried. Collin ended up winning by 11 shots. Shot a casual 13 under and basically lapped the field. It was one of those where I didn't really know who won. I didn't really care. I think I was too busy off crying to actually understand the gravitas of the situation. But it was one of those where he ended up winning by 12. And if you look at the rest of the field and where they ended up, he's a pro and the rest of us are somewhere below him. And it is one of those where, obviously I learned a lot from that tournament, but it's funny you and Chris bring up kind of the development side and, going through those growing pains. I did actually give up the game right around the age of 14. I went through that exact same stage where I was really good until I was 12. I was ranked in the top 3. I actually grew up in Australia. I actually know a couple of the guys on the high performance team now. And it's funny you actually bring that up. But I was ranked in the top 3 in the state when I was 12, playing off a handicap of 4. I felt really good about where I was. And then I cracked into high school. I met girls. I started going through puberty. I grew 6 inches in 1 year, and then everything spiraled out of control. And I felt like, I regressed from this handicap of 4 down to 9 or 10. And, I just was like, why am I still doing this? I'm not getting any better. And I really lost sight of that end goal of, I'm trying to better my skill set. And I did. I absolutely fell victim. I gave up the game for 1 year. And in hindsight, if I could have that year back, I really would, because, I still feel like I'm progressing now, but it's, I almost want that year back in terms of, how much better could I be had I stuck it out, grinded out those, bad patches. And, I kind of see this, it's really upsetting to me because I see, a lot of parents will pull out their kids from tournaments if they're not playing well. It's like, I don't really understand that, because to me, you have to play tournaments if you're feeling bad, because you have to understand what your body does in doing that and how you can combat that. I mean, I've had, especially now that I'm 22 or 21, had a couple rounds where I've been, say, hungover at the start of the round. And it's, sure, I might not be playing at my best, but how do I manage myself to the point where I can actually put up these decent rounds? And, if I'm scrappy, how can I just make a lot of pars? And hopefully by the time I get to hole 12, I'll have figured something out and I can kind of work through that. It's fascinating that, you've worked with Collin so much. And, I think I really wanted to hammer home that point of we do really get in this mindset of we are all after quick fixes in golf. We just want to play the best round every single time. And what happens when we don't do that? I mean, where do you see, kind of that curiosity factor of, say, those better golfers who will take the time to kind of reflect on a good round? Where do you see the, like the reflection playing in as like a crucial factor for learning?
Yeah, I may answer it slightly different, is that, adversity when we're not at our best is now a different skill. I mean, it's we can all be happy when we shoot our 66 and, oh yeah, give me the, have everybody tell me how great I am. But how we deal with that adversity, and I completely agree with you that I am not a big fan of parents pulling kids out, or kids saying, oh, I shot my 80 in the first round, I'm going to WD for tomorrow. I'm like, okay, you do that at D1 program after the first day and see what your head coach says. Okay, you can keep walking and you're not on the team anymore, right? So if you don't develop some of those skills as a 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old, there's no chance you're going to do it when you're an 18 or 19-year-old. So I would rather somebody come back to me, hey, Rick, I shot 85 and I shot 80. I go, great, thanks for showing up on day 2, and it got a little better. Not what you wanted, but it got a little better. And people forget about those rounds fairly quickly. Not in the moment. I mean, we are just, oh my God, people are going to think they see my scores. It's like they're worried about themselves too. But it's back to, I tell this story all the time when Collin played an AJGA event and he played in the wind and at PGA National and did not play very well. And it was one of his highest scores ever. And he just came to me and says, Rick, we need to work on flighting our irons. It wasn't like, well, next time it's windy, I'll just WD. It was, hey, this was a weakness. I need to make it a strength. And now, if you asked him, he would love to have it as windy as possible, right? That great ball striker. So I think we need to, and I tell juniors all the time, I want you to make as many mistakes as possible from the age of 12 to 16. And then those college coaches will see that. Remember a story of I believe it was UCLA's coach, who I'm good friends with, Derek Freeman. He was recruiting Collin and saw him at the high school state championship or whatever. And Collin triple bogeyed the first hole and then made 3 birdies in a row. And he goes, that's the type of player I want. I want to know what they do after a triple, after a bad round, after that. And that shows that mental toughness. That is a skill for everybody. So adversity, but you talked about reflection. After the round of golf, I say, okay, what did I do well? What did I learn? What can I work on? But I say, hey, if you had any shots to do over with and you can't say hit a better shot, would you made a different decision? Would you have committed? And I have them think back of what was in their control that we could make those changes for in the future, instead of I shot 80, I want to forget about it. It's like, okay, if you forget about it, you may keep doing it. Why don't we actually fess up to it a little bit and take some ownership? So ownership, accountability, I think, is missing a little bit with some of the younger generation.
Definitely. And Chris, so I mean, all 3 of us have played golf. What was the college round that you probably learned from the most, and what kind of triggered that?
I learned from the most, Pasa Tiempo. I remember starting I was maybe 7 over through 4 holes on the back 9 at Pasa. If you guys know that, I'm sure Rick has been there. Probably been there. I just horrific start, and it was one of my first tournaments as a freshman, and obviously scared to shoot 95. But I, slowed myself down. I tried to picture a good shot. I had seen all the shots that you could possibly imagine, going left, right. So, and usually now I have, it's still to this day is actually a good thing for the rest of my rounds if I have seen that. So I did birdie like for the last 12 maybe to shoot a decent round of maybe 76 or 75. I can't remember that, but it was definitely a memorable round of ups and downs, and you just never give up. So,
yeah, I feel like the not giving up is really important when it comes to what college coaches want to see, because it's true. I mean, I've been in, and Rick and Chris, I'm sure you guys have been the same way, where you've potentially been like in a collegiate round, and I've started out with a quad before. Like, it happens. I remember one tournament in Houston, we're playing Augusta Pines, and shotgun start at 7:30 in the morning in February. It's 35 degrees outside with a 20-mile-an-hour wind. You're freezing everywhere in places you didn't even think you could be cold. And of course, the hole that I got to start out on was a 200-yard par 3 with an island green, and promptly made a 7. And but it is one of those things where it's true. Like, Rick, like you said so yourself, it's if you decide to give up halfway through like a round, and you go back to your college coach, he's like, yeah, I'm mentally checked out today. I'd be like, okay, I'll never pick you again, and you can find a new school. It is really as easy as that. And it's, if I really find that mindset of getting into that fighting mentality and, really feeling like you're going to grit out that round is such a huge thing for college coaches, because in the ones that I've talked to, and even the ones that I've played for, that's all they want to see. Like, you don't have to have the best swing. You don't have to be the best technically. You got to fight, because that is what you do. That's how you win tournaments as a college team, and that's how you get better as a player.
Exactly. And that's an attitude, and that's something that can be trained, even as simple as when people go to the gym, right? One more rep, it's going to feel a little painful, but you're going to grow from that. I mean, it's something in life. And being competitive, I think, is lost a little bit. I mean, people want to win, don't get me wrong, but the competitiveness of, well, Rick, I'm not going to win, so why even bother? It's like, well, because 8th place is better than 9th place. Okay. Shooting 79 is better than shooting the 80, and being competitive within yourself, I think, because we're so extrinsically motivated of, I need to play in this future champions event so I can get ranking points so I can play in college. Okay, that's great. That's an extrinsic thing. The other one is, I can't wait to play in this future champions event because it's at a really cool golf course. I love being with my friends. I love to see how good I can play today. That's an intrinsic reason. That's going to help you in the long term much, much, much more than the extrinsic.
I love that. Well, I think that is a fantastic place to leave it for this week. Rick, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody, and looking forward to hearing future episodes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, Rick.
Thanks, buddy.
You got it.